Jonathan Roumie hadn't planned to speak that morning. It was a crisp Tuesday when House Speaker Nancy Pelosi sat confidently on the panel of Pulse of America, the country's most watched political program. The host had barely finished his introduction when Pelosi launched in, voice sharp and hands animated. "The so-called big, beautiful Trump bill is a national disaster," she declared, her voice rising. "Families can't even afford eggs anymore, $5 a dozen. And Donald Trump, he doesn't care. All he wants is walls and wealth." The room fell quiet. Viewers at home leaned in. No one challenged her. After years of media dominance, Pelosi was used to getting the last word. But today was different. Behind the stage in a quiet dressing room, Jonathan Roumie sat listening, eyes closed, hands folded in front of him, a small folder on the table beside him. He wasn't scheduled to speak, but something inside stirred. Not anger, conviction. He looked at the producer. "May I speak?" The producer hesitated, then nodded. Without music, without fanfare, Roumie stepped onto the stage. The host froze. The audience gasped. Pelosi turned, surprised. This wasn't in the script. Roumie didn't rush. He sat gently in the open chair beside her. Not a performer now, but a witness. Calm, still, ready. The host swallowed hard. "Mr. Roumie, this is unexpected. Do you have something to say?" Jonathan nodded slightly, then looked Pelosi in the eye. "You told the American people eggs cost $5 a dozen. That's false. The national average this morning is $2.29. The studio froze. "And you claimed this bill would destroy the country," he continued softly. "But what if, just for once, we told the truth?" He opened the folder. No theatrics, just paper. Simple, clear, undeniable. "This bill cuts taxes for families. It rewards honest work. It protects our borders, not with hatred, but with security. It's not feared because it might fail. It's feared because it might work." For the first time in years, Pelosi didn't respond. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked toward the host, hoping he'd interrupt. He didn't. Roumie leaned forward, not with aggression, but care. His voice stayed gentle. "We've called this a disaster, but it gives breaks to servers on their tips. It helps single mothers with overtime. It offers relief to small business owners barely holding on." A gasp came from a woman in the crowd. A man in the third row leaned in. Pelosi's cheeks flushed red. "That's slander," she snapped. Jonathan didn't blink. "It's not slander. It's record. It's truth." Then came the words that cut through the silence like thunder. "The only thing more inflated than your lies, Congresswoman, is your bank account, funded by the very people you claim to protect." No one clapped. No one cheered. They simply stared, silent, stunned, breathless, as if witnessing an earthquake not of the earth, but of the soul. Pelosi tried to speak again, but her voice faltered. Jonathan didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He simply continued, slowly, patiently, as if speaking to a student who should have known better. "This law isn't a weapon," he said. "It's a lifeline. For real families. For real people you have forgotten." The cameras scanned the room. A woman clutched her chest. A veteran wiped his eyes. Pelosi muttered, "You're twisting everything." Jonathan raised his hand gently. "No, Congresswoman, for the first time, we're untwisting it, and America is still watching." Then he turned, not to Pelosi, but to the audience, his voice steady and open. "This bill does not destroy the United States, it lifts it." He began to list it: tax cuts for working families, tip protection for wait staff, child care credits for exhausted mothers, funding for the military, real border security. One by one, the crowd nodded. The facts weren't numbers. They were people, and Roumie made them visible again. Pelosi's voice cracked. "Trump doesn't care about these people," as she said. Jonathan Roumie didn't flinch. He turned to her calmly and asked, not in anger, but in quiet resolve, "Then tell me, Congresswoman, who's really helping the people who are struggling to survive?" The host tried to cut in, but the room was too still, too heavy. Pelosi opened her mouth, trying to respond, but her voice faltered. "But what about the debt?" she stammered. Jonathan looked directly into her eyes. "Yes, the debt is growing, but so did every spending bill with your name on it. Bills that handed contracts to your donors and padded the pockets of your friends." A ripple moved through the crowd. Murmurs, exhales, glances. This wasn't just a political loss. It was an awakening. Pelosi's hands trembled as she reached for her water. Her confidence had cracked. Her voice barely held together. "You're turning me into the villain, Jonathan," she said quietly. "I've spent my life fighting for the American people." Roumie's expression softened, not with pity, but truth. "You were supposed to be their voice, Congresswoman. But somewhere along the way, you became their cage. The crowd froze. Shock rolled through the room like a quiet wave. Roumie gently opened a new page from his folder. His voice never rose. According to public records, millions allocated for affordable housing disappeared. And you signed the papers. Pelosi's face went pale. This isn't the place, she began. It's exactly the place, Jonathan interrupted, his voice calm but firm. Because this is live television and the people deserve to know. He paused, looked into the lens. You don't fear Trump's policies, you fear what happens when they work. A man stood in the back of the studio, eyes red. Tell the truth, Nancy, he shouted. Then others joined in. He's lied for too long. Let Jonathan speak. Pelosi's face collapsed under the weight. The power she once wielded was crumbling in real time. Her hands searched for words that wouldn't come. Jonathan reached slowly into his folder again. This time he held up a photograph. This is Frank, he said softly. A Vietnam veteran, lives in a trailer in Ohio. Because of policies you supported, his benefits were almost cut last winter. He turned the photo to the camera. Frank couldn't afford heat, while you, Congresswoman, were flying to a donor's wedding in the Bahamas, on a private jet, paid for with campaign money. The room was dead silent. Then from the audience, I'm a veteran, a man said, standing with shaky hands. And he's right. My rent went up. My benefits vanished. One by one, others stood. A nurse wiped her eyes. Another woman whispered, We trusted you, Nancy. Pelosi looked around, truly looked, as if seeing those faces for the first time. Jonathan didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. You speak of compassion, he said, but somewhere along the way, you forgot what that word looks like. And for the first time, it wasn't just Pelosi who broke. It was something deeper. The host, visibly shaken, tried to pivot. Congresswoman Pelosi, but Jonathan turned back to the audience. These missing funds, they were for elderly homes, shelters for abused women, rental help for single moms. A mother in the front row covered her mouth as silent sobs escaped her. And while she claims this bill will destroy the country, he continued, let me tell you what it actually does. He faced the camera. It strengthens our military. It funds the wall. It lets workers keep more of their pay. It restores fairness by requiring those who can work to work. He paused. Yes, it adds to the debt, but it doesn't bury the future. It builds it. And in living rooms across America, millions of people realized in real time, maybe they had been lied to all along. Pelosi tried once more. Her voice was hoarse. This is theater, she said. Jonathan is just putting on a show. He looked at her, quiet. Then came the line that would echo across the internet for weeks. No, Congresswoman, you are the show, and today is your last performance. Gasps filled the studio. The camera zoomed in. Pelosi sat back, pale, hands in her lap. The illusion was gone. Jonathan continued, You've spent years pretending to fight for the people, but you fought for your donors, your image, your position. His voice dropped to nearly a whisper. And today, that image collapsed. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Outside the studio, the moment was already viral. Clips were being shared, slowed down, wept over. This wasn't a takedown. It was a reckoning. And Roumie wasn't finished yet. Backstage, chaos reigned. Producers whispered, advisors panicked, viewership soared. One assistant muttered, We've never seen anything like this. But Jonathan Roumie wasn't thinking about the ratings. He was thinking about the truth. He leaned toward the host, calm but firm. Please, let me finish. The people deserve it. The host nodded slowly. Jonathan turned back to the audience and gently reached into his folder one last time. If the Congresswoman wants to talk about immigration, he said, then let's tell the truth about that too. He lifted a photograph. This is Rosa, he said, his voice beginning to tremble. She's 6 years old. Her mother was murdered by cartel members in Mexico. Rosa was taken by smugglers, raped, and left to die in the desert. Gasps echoed through the room. Pelosi's jaw stiffened. We found her just in time, Jonathan said softly. She's safe now, but only barely. He looked around the room. This is what broken borders do. His voice cracked. Trump's immigration policy isn't cruelty. It's protection for children like Rosa. The crowd didn't move. Grown adults were frozen in their seats. A cameraman lowered his lens, overcome. A mother in the front row clutched her child. Behind Jonathan, a screen flickered to life. Images of detention centers under past administrations, fentanyl seizures, grieving parents at border memorials. He let the silence breathe, then spoke again. Congresswoman Pelosi opposed every solution, every wall, every patrol, every safeguard. She called them racist. He turned back to Pelosi, voice low but piercing. Then tell that to Rosa's mother if she were still alive. The audience shifted in discomfort. Pelosi muttered under her breath, "This is emotional manipulation." Jonathan turned slowly. "No, Congresswoman, this is reality. The one you ignored while hiding behind rehearsed speeches and policy noise." He took a step forward. "And while you wept crocodile tears on podiums, families were burying their children." The camera panned across the room. A veteran wiped his eyes. A Latina mother rocked silently, hand covering her mouth. The host said nothing. There was no need. The weight of it all had spoken. Jonathan wasn't looking for applause. He wasn't performing. He was grieving. He closed his folder quietly and turned to the camera. "I know some of you watching this are confused. You have heard one side of the story for too long. You were told this bill was chaos, that Trump's policy was hate, that we didn't care." He paused. "But we do care, deeply. And this bill, this great, beautiful bill, is proof of that." He turned to Pelosi. "You built a career on fear, Congresswoman. We're rebuilding this country with truth." Pelosi's face fell. Her shoulders slumped. The illusion collapsed. Then a woman stood in the crowd, clutching her child. Her voice shook. "Thank you, Jonathan. My husband died of fentanyl. You just spoke for him." One by one, others rose. Some clapped, some cried. Many just stood, quiet, reverent. Pelosi remained seated. She couldn't speak. She knew. It was over. But Jonathan wasn't finished. Behind the scenes, a phone rang in the control room. A producer picked up, stunned. It was the White House. President Trump had been watching. "Let him finish," Trump said. "Don't cut the feed. Let America hear every word." Back on stage, Pelosi's aide rushed up with a folded note. She read it, turned white. The message was simple. Don't fight back. But it was already too late. Jonathan held up one final document. "This is a federal audit," he said. "It shows that $3.6 million meant for veterans in New York was diverted. All of it signed by you." A glass hit the ground. The thud echoed. It was Pelosi's. The host stammered. "Is that document verified?" Jonathan nodded. "Confirmed by 3 agencies. This morning." Pelosi stared at the floor like a trapped figure. Her hands shook. Then Jonathan stepped forward and spoke just above a whisper. "America gave you its trust, and you spent it on yourself." The silence that followed was suffocating. Pelosi's voice barely came out. "You don't understand the pressure." Jonathan paused. "We all feel pressure, Congresswoman, but not all of us betray those who believed in us." A single tear fell down Pelosi's cheek. "I started with good intentions," she said softly. Jonathan nodded slowly. "But you ended with greed." The studio was silent, but the moment was unmistakable. Everyone knew what they had just witnessed. Then Pelosi did something unexpected. She looked into the camera. "I failed," she said. Her voice cracked. "I thought no one would ever stand up to me. I was wrong." A wave of whispers rippled through the room. Even Jonathan's expression shifted. He didn't gloat. He only listened. Pelosi turned to him. "You're not like me," she said. "You still believe." Jonathan answered simply, "I believe in America, and so do the people watching. That's why they deserve better." And for the first time, Pelosi didn't resist. She nodded. Not redemption, but something real. All across the country, families cried. Not because Jonathan Roumie had won an argument, but because truth had finally spoken. The host, eyes glistening, took a breath. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just witnessed history." Nancy Pelosi didn't storm off. She stood, looked once more at Roumie, and walked off the stage like someone who had finally seen herself. Jonathan remained seated. The camera stayed on him. He spoke gently. "This bill is not perfect, but it is honest, and it is built on something we've lost: accountability." He turned to the screen. A graph appeared. Egg prices falling, gas prices stabilizing, border arrests rising. "These things didn't happen by accident," he said. "They happened because someone stopped being afraid of the noise and started fighting for you." "Everything I just told you," Jonathan Roumie said, turning to the audience with tears in his eyes, "didn't happen by accident. It happened because, for once, we stopped being afraid of noise and started fighting for you." From the front row, a small voice rose. A little girl, no older than 10, stood up, her voice delicate but clear. "Thank you, Mr. Roumie." Jonathan's eyes glistened. The entire nation felt it. In that moment, he didn't just speak to America, he touched its soul. Then, after the break, something unexpected. The producers opened a live phone line. The first voice came through, old, shaky, but steady. "Hello," said a man. "My name's Harold. I'm a farmer in Indiana. I've been working this land 47 years. Voted Democrat all my life, but today I need to say something." The studio fell silent. Jonathan looked up, respectfully. "I watched how Congresswoman Pelosi shamed this bill," Harold continued. "Lied about food prices like she shops where we do. Eggs aren't $5. And this law, what it does for small businesses like mine, it matters." Jonathan wiped a tear from the corner of his eye. Harold's voice cracked. "I've got grandkids now, and for the first time in years, I feel like someone in Washington actually cares about us, the common people, and that someone is you, Mr. Roumie." The line cut. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. Jonathan breathed slowly. He didn't need to speak. When a lifelong Democrat farmer crosses lines, not for power but for truth, the dam is broken, and the flood had only just begun. The energy in the room changed again as a producer rushed forward, handing Jonathan a folded pink note. A woman in the crowd had passed it to him quietly. He unfolded it, read it in silence. Then gently he asked the host, "May I read this out loud?" The host nodded. Jonathan held up the paper, voice trembling. "Thank you, Mr. Roumie. Now I have a bed. I sleep safely. My new mother says you helped us. I love America." He paused. "It's from Rosa," he said. The little girl who once had no voice now spoke for a nation. Tears welled across the studio. A nurse clutched her mouth. A veteran lowered his head. Jonathan folded the letter slowly, reverently. "This," he said, "this is why we fight. Not for headlines, not for power, but for her, for Harold, for every forgotten soul." Behind the lights, Pelosi sat still, shame in her eyes, quiet, small. Jonathan turned to her for the last time. "You said this bill divides America," he whispered. "But Congresswoman, we're not dividing it. We're stitching it back together with truth, courage, and love." The audience didn't cheer. They cried, and the silence said more than applause ever could. Behind the scenes, panic spread. Phones rang, social media exploded. Jonathan Roumie destroys Pelosi on live TV. The moment America switched sides, a nation weeps at Rosa's letter. An aide whispered behind Pelosi, "It's over, ma'am. You have to resign." She didn't argue. She sat with her temples pressed between her hands. Hours earlier, she'd walked in proud, expecting praise. Now everything built on half-truths was falling apart. Jonathan, however, was calm. He looked into the camera one final time. "This bill won't fix everything," he said, "but it starts something." He nodded once. "To the forgotten, you are not forgotten. Not anymore, and under this administration, you never will be again." In homes across America, people wept, not out of politics, but because for the first time, someone had made the truth feel personal. As the host tried to conclude the program, Jonathan stepped forward and extended his hand toward Pelosi. She looked at it, then refused, because some people would rather fall alone than rise with those they ignored. Later that night, the clips went viral. TikTok lit up with Rosa's letter. Facebook overflowed with veterans reposting Harold's call. YouTube featured one title, "The Day Jonathan Roumie Crushed Corruption with a Whisper." In every home, people sat in silence. Some stood, some wept. A father in Detroit, who lost his son to fentanyl, shared the video with a caption, "Finally, wow, someone spoke for us." Jonathan didn't go online, he didn't celebrate. He went back to his quiet office, sat alone, and called Rosa's guardian. "Please tell her, thank you," he said. "She reminded me why I still believe in this country." The next day at sunset, Jonathan Roumie returned to the studio. No cameras, no makeup, just him. He stood in the center of the empty stage. In his hand, a photo. A boy, Eli, 12 years old, murdered by someone who should never have been allowed back into the country. Jonathan placed the photo on Pelosi's former seat. "This," he whispered, "is for those who make laws, not for headlines, not for polls, for Eli, for Rosa, for the families." He reached into his coat and pulled out a tiny toy train, the kind Eli loved, and set it gently beside the photo. Someone quietly recorded it with their phone. The clip, barely 30 seconds, spread like wildfire. Jonathan Roumie returns to honor a child he never met and brings a nation to tears. Within 24 hours, letters flooded in. Thousands of people, parents, grandparents, veterans, children, shared their own stories. The movement had a name now: Justice for Eli Inagüe. Jonathan Roumie was no longer just a speaker, he was hope. People didn't cheer, they reflected. Because this moment wasn't political anymore, it was moral. And sometimes the most powerful apology isn't spoken into a microphone, it's written in silence, signed in pain, delivered with accountability. That night, Jonathan was invited to a primetime one-on-one interview. He almost declined, but Rosa's new mother sent him a short video. In it, Rosa held up a handmade sign: "Tell America thank you for saving me." So Jonathan bonets yes. The interview was live. No notes, no script, just him, a calm host in a nation listening. "You exposed a powerful woman," the host said. "You made America cry. Now what?" Jonathan smiled softly. This was never about tearing someone down. It was about standing up for someone. Rosa, Eli, Harold, the invisible. The host leaned in. "What makes you different, Mr. Roumie?" Jonathan paused. "I don't hear the polls. I don't hear the noise. I hear the pain. And I try to make something good out of it." At the end, the host had tears in his eyes. He shook Jonathan's hand and whispered, "Thank you for reminding us what this job was meant to mean." And in homes across the country, across political lines, Americans believed again, not in a party, not in a bill, but in a man who refused to be silent. The next morning, the Senate vote. The Senate chamber was full, heavy with emotion. Some wore red pins for Eli, others wore yellow for Rosa. Jonathan walked in holding two drawings, one from Rosa, one from a classroom of school children. He placed them on his desk gently, then stood. "I know not everyone agrees with this bill," he began, "but let's be honest. America hasn't been bleeding by numbers. It's been bleeding from neglect." He pointed to the drawings. "This law is for those who feel invisible, who have no lobby, no PAC, no voice." He paused. "This is our chance to remind them that we still see them." The chamber was silent. Then the vote began. And when it ended, thunderous applause. Some cried, some hugged, even past opponents nodded. The great and beautiful bill, once mocked, was now law. And Jonathan Roumie hadn't just written policy, he'd written history. 2 days later, the Oval Office. President Trump met him with an uncharacteristically quiet handshake. "You didn't just win a debate," Trump said. "You changed the climate of this country." Jonathan nodded. "I didn't do it alone, sir. The truth did the heavy lifting." Then he had one request. "I want to form a working group, not of lawyers, not of lobbyists, of real people. Parents who lost children, farmers like Harold, even children like Rosa, who understand fear better than most adults." Trump didn't hesitate. "Make it happen." 48 hours later, a table overlooking the Washington Monument. Around the table, mothers, fathers, veterans, children. Jonathan sat at the head, but he didn't speak first. He listened. And for the first time in years, those who had always been ignored finally had a seat at the table. Sunday morning, however, across America, church bells rang, not out of tradition, out of remembrance. In small towns and cities, people prayed. They lit candles, spoke Rosa's name, read Eli's story. In classrooms, kids drew pictures. Some drew Jonathan, some drew Rosa, some drew a wall, not out of hate, but hope. Even politicians who had opposed the bill spoke without bitterness. "I don't agree with the policy," one senator said, "but I can't deny what Jonathan Roumie did. He reminded us why we ever got into public service." Back in Indiana, Harold's farm, the camera found him, watching the interview, eyes full, voice soft. That man did more in 48 hours than most have done in 3 years. That night, one final message. Jonathan sat in front of a small camera, no script, no lights, just him. "This story," he said, "isn't about me, it's about you." He held up Rosa's note. She was rescued from fear. Then Eli's letter. A mother who just wanted her son's name to be known. He folded his hands. The great and beautiful project didn't fix America, but it reminded us that we can. He smiled. "Now it's your turn." He leaned forward gently. "If this story touched you, if it made you think, cry, or believe again, stop scrolling. Like it. Leave a comment. Tell us what parts spoke to you." Then he pointed softly. "And if you believe in the truth, in second chance, in us, subscribe. Stay with us. The fight for the soul of this country has only just begun." He looked into the lens. Final words, clear, true. "I'm Jonathan Roumie, and no matter who you are, I'm fighting for you." And the world understood.